Namaste, Dandava Pranam. By the instruction and grace of our spiritual master, Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa, Sripad Bhakti and Madhava Puri Maharaj, we're here reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Chapter 14, Canto 4, The Creation of the Fourth Order, Chapter 14, The Story of King Vena. Text 1. Maitreya Uvacha Brigvadayaste Munayo Lokanam Chema Darshinam Goptarya Sati Vairnirnam Pasyanta Pashu Samyatam. The great sage Maitreya continued, O great hero of Vidura, the great sages headed by Bhrigu were always thinking of the welfare of the people in general. When they saw that in the absence of King Anga, there was no one to protect the interests of the people, they understood that without a ruler, the people would become independent and non-regulated. Purport. In this verse, the significant word is Chema Darshana, which refers to those who are always looking after the welfare of the people in general. All the great sages headed by Bhrigu were always thinking of how to elevate all the people of the universe to the spiritual platform. Indeed, they advised the kings of every planet to rule the people with that ultimate goal of life in mind. The great sages used to advise the head of the state or the king, and he used to rule the populace in accordance with their instruction. After the disappearance of King Anga, there was no one to follow the instructions of the great sages. Consequently, all the citizens became unruly, so much so that they could be compared to animals. As described in Bhagavad Gita 4.13, human society must be divided into 4 orders according to quality and work. In every society, there must be an intelligent class, administrative class, productive class, and worker class. In modern democracy, these scientific divisions are turned topsy-turvy, and by vote, Sudras or workers are chosen for administrative posts. Having no knowledge of the ultimate goal of life, such persons whimsically enact laws without knowledge of life's purpose. The result is that no one is happy. Text 2. Virhamataram ahuya sunitam brahmavadina prakritya samatam venam abhyasin patimbuva. The great sages then called for the queen mother, Sunita, and with her permission they installed Vena on the throne as master of the world. All the ministers, however, disagreed with this. Text 3. Shrutva nripa sanhagatam venam atyugra sashanam nilihordasya vasabhya sarpatrasta ivakava. It was already known that Vena was very severe and cruel. Therefore, as soon as all the thieves and rogues in the state heard of his ascendance to the royal throne, they became very much afraid of him. Indeed, they hid themselves here and there as rats hide themselves from snakes. Purport. When the government is very weak, rogues and thieves flourish. Similarly, when the government is very strong, all the thieves and rogues disappear or hide themselves. Of course, Vena was not a very good king, but he was known to be cruel and severe. Thus the state at least became freed from thieves and rogues. Text 4. Sa'arudha nripastana Punhadosta vibhutibi abhamene mahabhagan stabdha sambhavitasvata. When the king ascended to the throne, he became all-powerful with 8 kinds of opulences. Consequently, he became too proud. By virtue of his false prestige, he considered himself to be greater than anyone. Thus, he began to insult great personalities. Purport. In this verse, the word asta vibhutibi means by 8 opulences, and it's very important. The king is supposed to possess 8 kinds of opulences. By dint of mystic yoga practice, kings generally acquired these 8 opulences. These kings were called Raja Rishis, kings who were also great sages. By practicing mystic yoga, a Raja Rishi could become smaller than the small, greater than the great, and could get whatever he desired. A Raja Rishi could also create a kingdom, bring everyone under his control, and rule everyone. These were some of the opulences of a king. King Vena, however, was not practiced in yoga, but he became very proud of his royal position nonetheless. Because he was not very considerate, he began to misuse his power and insult great personalities. Text 5. Evam madanda utsikto nirankusha ibhadvipa paryatan ratam astaya kampayan iva rodasi. When he became overly blind due to his opulences, King Vena mounted a chariot and, like an uncontrolled elephant, began to travel through the kingdom, causing the sky and earth to tremble wherever he went. Text 6. Na yastavyam na dhatavyam na hotavyam dvijakvachit itinya bharaya dharmam virigoshena sarvasa. All the twice-born Brahmanas were forbidden henceforward to perform any sacrifice, and they were also forbidden to give charity or to offer clarified butter. Thus King Vena sounded kettle drums throughout the countryside. In other words, he stopped all kinds of religious rituals. Purport. What was committed by King Vena many years ago is at present being carried out by atheistic governments all over the world. The world situation is so tense that at any moment governments may issue declarations to stop religious rituals. Eventually, the world situation will become so degraded that it will be impossible for pious men to live on the planet. Therefore, sane people should execute Krishna consciousness very seriously, so that they can go back home, back to Godhead, without having to further suffer the miserable conditions predominant in this universe. Text 7. Vinasya vikshaya munayo durvritasya vichestitam vimrishya loka vyasanam kripayochusma satrinam. Therefore all the great sages assembled together, and after observing cruel Vena's atrocities, concluded that a great danger and catastrophe was approaching the people of the world. Thus, out of compassion, they began to talk amongst themselves, for they themselves were the performers of the sacrifices. Purport. Before King Vena was enthroned, all the great sages were very much anxious to see the welfare of society. When they saw that King Vena was most irresponsible, cruel, and atrocious, they began to think of the welfare of the people. It should be understood that sages, saintly persons, and devotees are not unconcerned with people's welfare. Ordinary karmis are busy acquiring money for sense gratification, and ordinary jnanis are socially aloof when they speculate on liberation. But actual devotees and saintly persons are always anxious to see how people can be made happy both materially and spiritually. Therefore the great sages began to consult one another on how to get out of the dangerous atmosphere created by King Vena. Text 8. Ahau ubhayata praptam lokasya vyasanham mahat darunyo bhayato dipte Ivataskara palayo. When the great sages consulted one another, they saw that the people were in a dangerous position from both directions. When a fire blazes on both ends of a log, the ants in the middle are in a very dangerous situation. Similarly, at the time, the people in general were in dangerous position due to an irresponsible king on one side and thieves and rogues on the other. Text 9. Arhajaka bayad esha kritorajatad arhana Tatopyasid bhayam tvadya katam syat swasti dehinam. Thinking to save the state from irregularity, the sages began to consider that it was due to a political crisis that they made Vena king, although he was not qualified. But alas, now the people were being disturbed by the king himself. Under such circumstances, how could the people be happy? Purport. In Bhagavad Gita 18.5, it is stated that even in the renounced order, one should not give up sacrifice, charity, and penance. The brahmacharis must perform sacrifices. The grihastas must give in charity, and those in the renounced order of life, the vanaprasthas and sannyasis, must practice penance and austerities. These are the procedures by which everyone can be elevated to the spiritual platform. When the sages and saintly persons saw that King Vena had stopped all these functions, they became concerned about the people's progress. Saintly people preach God consciousness, or Krishna consciousness, because they were anxious to save the general populace from the dangers of animalistic life. There must be a good government to see that the citizens are actually executing their religious rituals, and thieves and rogues must be curbed. When this is done, the people can advance peacefully in spiritual consciousness and make their lives successful. Text 10. Hare Eva Paya Posha Poshakasyapyanartha Brit Venha Prakrityaiva Kala Sunita Garbha Sambhava. The sages began to think within themselves. Because he was born from the womb of Sunita, King Vena is by nature very mischievous. Supporting this mischievous king is exactly like maintaining a snake with milk. Now he has become a source of all difficulties. Purport. Saintly persons are generally aloof from social activities and the materialistic way of life. King Vena was supported by saintly persons just to protect the citizens from the hands of rogues and thieves, but after his ascendance to the throne, he became a source of trouble to the sages. Saintly people are especially interested in performing sacrifices and austerities for the advancement of spiritual life. But Vena, instead of being obliged because of the saints' mercy, turned out to be their enemy because he prohibited them from executing their ordinary duties. A serpent who is maintained with milk and bananas simply stores poison in its teeth and awaits the day to bite his master. Text 11. Nirupita prajapala sajigham sati vai praja tatapi shantvayemamum nasmam statpatakam sprishit. We appointed this Vena king of the state in order to give protection to the citizens, but now he has become the enemy of the citizens. Despite all these discrepancies, we should at once try to pacify him. By doing so, we may not be touched by the sinful results caused by him. Purport. The saintly kings elected King Vena to become king, but he proved to be mischievous. Therefore, the sages were very much afraid of incurring sinful reaction. The law of karma prohibits a person even to associate with a mischievous individual. By electing Vena to the throne, the saintly sages certainly associated with him. Ultimately, King Vena became so mischievous that the saintly kings actually became afraid of becoming contaminated by his activities. Thus, before taking any action against him, the sages tried to pacify and correct him so that he might turn from his mischief. Text 12. Tadvidvadbhir asadvrito venosmabi krito nripa sandvito yadino vacham agrihisyatya dharmakrit lokadikara sandhagdam dahisyama svatejasa. The saintly kings continued thinking. Of course, we were completely aware of his mischievous nature, yet we nevertheless enthroned Vena. If we cannot persuade King Vena to accept our advice, he will be condemned by the public, and we will join them. Thus, by our prowess, we shall burn him to ashes. Purport. Saintly persons are not interested in political matters, yet they are always thinking of the welfare of the people in general. Consequently, they sometimes have to come down to the political field and make steps to correct the misguided government or royalty. However, in Kali Yuga, saintly persons are not as powerful as they previously were. They used to be able to burn any sinful man to ashes by virtue of their spiritual prowess. Now, saintly persons have no such power due to the influence of the age of Kali. Indeed, the Brahmanas do not even have the power to perform sacrifices in which animals are put into a fire to attain new life. Under these circumstances, instead of actively taking part in politics, saintly persons should engage in chanting the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna. By the grace of Lord Chaitanya, by simply chanting this Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, the general populace can derive all benefits without political implications. And thus ends our reading for today. We will continue from text 13 on Wednesday. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Srila Prabhupada, Srila Guru Maharaj, Srila Gurudev, Srila Acharya Dev, Srila Shanta Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the worldwide devotees. Sama Bhaktivedanta Vrinda Ki Jai. Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Nrsimhapali Dham Ki Jai. Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Ju Ki Jai. Ganga Mayi Yamuna Mayi Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Giri Govardhan Gupta Govardhan Dham Ki Jai. Sham Kund Radha Kund Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Jai Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Harinam Sankirtan Yagi Ki Jai. Scientific Sankirtan Yagi Ki Jai. Princeton Bhaktivedanta Institute Ki Jai. Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Institute Ki Jai. Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat Ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi Hari 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 Bol. Dandavat Pranam.